Okay, is everybody ready? Well, welcome everybody to the Facilities and Finance Committee meeting here on March 6, 2015. First of all, I guess we have to check and see if the meeting was properly posted. Ms. Dudley?
Yes, the meeting's been properly posted.
Okay, so we verified that. Next is opportunity for citizens to speak. Are there any citizens that tonight here that would like to speak to the committee before we get started? Nobody who isn't planning to speak anyway, later on. Okay, so that takes care of the first two items on our general business. Now we'll go to the committee issues. We have a number of action items tonight. The first one is approval of monthly vouchers.
No questions at this time.
Yeah, I should have called in for a few, but I didn't, so, yeah. Okay, we have a motion to approve monthly vouchers. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Okay. Approval elimination of the implicit subsidy, implicit rate subsidy, item number 2. Are you carrying the ball on this, Ms.
I
Clifton?
am.
Okay.
Included in your packet is information on the plan to phase out the implicit rate subsidy that exists in our current structure. What we would do is create a self-reliant premium for our retiree group, which currently is being subsidized by our active employees. The proposal is to phase the subsidy out over a 5-year period, and at the end of that 5 years, then the retiree group would be self-sufficient.
Mr. McCaffrey?
How did we come up with the time frame of 5 years?
I believe it was the consensus of the group from the workshop.
Okay.
We thought immediately was too fast. It
Definitely.
increases retiree premiums at about 50%.
Okay.
Well, the active group would be reduced by about 8% premium. This comes from our actuary as far as the valuations. So we would rely on their calculations as we get to that 5th year, that being fully unsubsidized, if you will.
And who's the actuary?
Milliman?
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Edlin?
Can you walk us through what the retirees can be expected to be paid to, what they will be contributing towards the premium share as calculated?
If we use the example where the current retiree pays a 12% premium share, and keep in mind, as different groups retired, there were different terms, but the most recent groups are under a 12% premium share. They currently, do you have a preference if I take single or family, or do you want to hear both?
That's a good question, because retirees, typically, it would be a single individual or potentially 2 people. And I'm not sure how that would be affected by the Affordable Care Act if both spouses retire with some sort of health care benefit. Are they treated as singles in that case?
If they're both district employees?
No, not necessarily district employees, but one is a district employee and the other might have had a retirement benefit when they retired of health care.
Our employee makes a choice.
Okay.
They can elect either family or single.
Okay.
So it depends on their own, just it depends on their own circumstances.
Okay, for conversation's sake, we'll say family.
Okay. So currently, our family premium amounts to $20,082 annually. If there's a 12% premium share, that amounts to $2,410 roughly on an annual basis. On a monthly basis, that's $200.82 is the employee's contribution. Over a period of 5 years, that increases about 20% each year. So on a monthly basis, year 2, the premium share would be $220.90. Year 3, $240.99. Year 4, $261. Year 5, or I'm sorry, I'm a year off here, aren't I? Year 3 was $261, year 4 is $281, and year 5 is $301 per month. So on an annualized basis, that goes from $2,410 under a current plan to $3,615 annually. Now, the assumption is there under those dollar amounts is that it's our traditional plan and that there's no increase in premiums, which we know we're phasing out. The proposal is to phase out the traditional plan, which brings premiums down. And then we know, based on historical data, that there's inflationary factor that we will see in the future.
I thought that we were calculating increases in premiums going forward.
This example does not, just so you can see that the subsidy, how the subsidy would work, how it's phased out.
Did our actuarian come up with a number, how much the projected premium increase will be? I know we're trying to avoid 2018 and the Cadillac tax, which was $28,000 a year for a policy. So right now, if we're at 17 or 18,000,
We're at a current,
20
the total
20,000.
plan is 20,000.
20, so,
Keep,
yeah.
keep in mind that what the retirees pay have nothing to do except for, the only benefit of retirees paying more is it lowers the premium for our regular employees.
Right.
So the Affordable Care Act, them paying a much higher premium doesn't affect us under the Affordable Care Act because they're not our employees.
I'm looking at the bottom number, though. By 2018, we're going to be going from a current plan year of 161 employees that are pre-65 down to 69. So I'm not seeing a significant impact on our overall healthcare costs with the retirees in the plan as it is currently.
What do you mean?
The subsidy, by eliminating the subsidy, all it's doing is changing the mix on the premiums. It doesn't,
Correct, but we're going to have less people that are going to be in the plan
well,
overall, that are getting the subsidy right now. So we're not going to get the,
may or may not be true. Employees can stay on our plan at 65 or older. The information down below just is just that. It's just information to show of the existing employees we have, where do they fall off and hit the post-65?
okay. And we currently have a cap on retiree benefits?
The current benefits is an annual, or an amount not to exceed 75,000 up
Okay.
to 8 years of coverage.
And with the amount that we're looking at, we're not going to be anywhere near that. I mean, somebody could theoretically retire at age 65, or 55, 56, and not burn through that amount.
If they have a family plan, they definitely would burn through that amount. Because it's the whole premium that applies.
Oh,
Not-
okay,
It-
not the implicit subsidy. Yeah,
Correct. It would be the
Oh,
annual
okay.
premium less their contribution that
Got it.
applies to the 75,000.
okay. So then, just the opposite would be true. Not a lot of people are going to be on it till they're age 65.
Right.
Correct. They would, at least under the district's provided $75,000 coverage.
Okay.
Yeah, the answer to your question is that they'll consume those dollars faster because the total cost of their particular plan, because they're now their own pool, and they're a high-risk pool because of the nature of, where they're at in their life. And it's a smaller group of people than our overall employee group, that they'll be consuming that $75,000 at a much faster rate than they
Okay.
are today. And I actually checked with the district. I asked them to prepare me some numbers. I think right now we have about 4 or 5 people that are, after, when that 75,000 came into effect, that are now running out of the dollars on the 75,000. So it takes them about, depending on their status, it takes about 4 or 5 years for them to run out of money. Some will take longer, depending on whether they choose single or family. But this will probably more or less make it, most of them in 4 or 5 years will have exhausted all 75,000, maybe even in 3 years. So,
Last question I have is there any chance we would be sued for age discrimination?
No, not, no, this is a standard practice of pooling your actives versus retirees. It's not an uncommon feature in any plan.
Okay, just seems to me like if you're over a certain age, we're going to charge you more.
That's actually not what's happening. It's putting the claims into the groups that are generating, or adjusting the premiums to reflect the actual claims. So, post 65, you'll see that the premiums drop off dramatically because they're incorporated with Medicare.
Mr. McCaffrey?
I mean, for me, I guess it's we're not charging them more, we're charging what they should be charged. They're two separate things.
But if
Why
you're
would-
under
Why
age,
would we subsidize retirees at the expense of active employees? That sounds rather unfair to me. It sounds like reverse age discrimination to me, actually.
well, it all depends on how you look at it, because if you're below age 55, you're in a
Well, if
in
I
a
was, if
different
I was a
group.
district employee and I was subsidizing somebody else's insurance, I think I would look at it as reverse age discrimination.
Guess we'll agree to disagree.
No.
Just to be clear, I mean, one of the things that I think we feel that is required, that per the normal retirement language, the percent that they pay is still the same as our active employees. Their share of 12% is the same as our active employees as a percentage.
It will be based on whatever contract they retired under.
So that part of it is still, the percentages haven't changed, it's just the dollars are going up. From what I understand, this has been shared with the teachers. The teachers are aware that this is intended to be implemented. They understand why it's being implemented. They also understand that it's a lot fairer to do it over 5 years than to do it over 2. So I guess if you're under 55, you'd probably want it done tomorrow, right? But it depends on your perspective. But most of the teachers, our active employees, understand why we're doing this. They see the reason for it, and so it's not something that they're going to be surprised by tomorrow. Mr. McCaffrey?
I move approval of the elimination of the implicit rate subsidy.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Como. Any additional discussion or questions? Okay, well, I guess we can go ahead and, is this a roll call vote, or we can just do it aye? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All in favor? None opposed. Okay, that covers item number 2. Thank you for that. I gotta go back and find my agenda again. Approval of the high deductible health plan and HSA contribution.
Administration is recommending that we, as part of our offerings for our health insurance, provide a high deductible health plan that has an HSA contribution. The plan being proposed would be available as an option year 1 and would become our plan year 2, where we would then eliminate having the traditional plan that we currently have. If you wanted to look at some comparisons between our current plan and the plan being offered, starting with the single plan, our current plan has a $675 deductible with a maximum out-of-pocket of $1,500. Under the high deductible plan, the deductible would then become $2,600, but the district would fund a HSA health savings account for $1,300, leaving the employee with a risk of $1,300. Again, that would compare to our out-of-pocket of $1,500 under our current plan. Under a family coverage, our deductible is $1,350. That would go to $5,200 under a high deductible plan, but that $5,200 plan would have a $2,600 HSA contribution with it, leaving the net risk to the employee family coverage of $2,600. Our current out-of-pocket under family is $3,000. The plan being offered has a lesser premium. It puts us in a better position as we go down the road with the Cadillac tax. That is a concern. Now, as costing goes, when we measure for the Cadillac tax, it's the current premium plus the employer's HSA contribution. So it's the two pieces combined as compared to the total premium that we now have under our traditional plan. I don't know if you have specific questions on how this.
Well, we had a couple work sessions on this, but I'm sure a few people might have maybe one or two additional questions. Mr. Como?
We're, the goal here is we're actively managing our costs. Healthcare is changing by the moment, essentially. We have taken some other steps in the past, whether it's been plan design changes, implementing the self-insurance program, and the wellness clinic. These are all steps to actively manage our health care costs, and this is the next step in a series of steps that we're taking to manage those costs. And there is a financial impact here with regards to savings. Could you go through what that is?
The plan does have a reduced premium. Currently, our single coverage employee would experience a $51 per year savings. On a family plan, the employee would see $157 reduced, and that's assuming, again, the 12% contribution. The employer side of that, per single plan, the district would experience a $374 annual savings and a $1,149 annual savings with a family plan. So what that does is positions us going forward to put us in a little better position in cost management. This is a consumer-driven plan, so experience tells us that when employees have a stake in the game, our costs tend to drop. They ask questions of their doctor, they look for services and compare prices, because they're actually writing that check for the services. One thing I should point out with a health savings account is, since the district puts the money in the account, the employee has the option to pull the funds to pay for their services, or they can allow them to accumulate and go carry forward. The account stays with the employee. If they separate service, it's still their account. Once the district puts the money in the account, the employee has total control of how it's used. It's tax deferred, or it's tax-free if it's used for medical purposes.
And that's one of the things, having it portable, that's a very common thing that you see in the private sector now. That portability of the HSA is a plus. And it helps to also, again, goes back to that behavior change. Okay, so let's make sure that we're utilizing the doctors when we need to use the doctors. You don't want to hold back either, okay? Use them when you need to, make good decisions. And you can be rewarded for those good decisions, too, on an individual or family basis through the portability and the use of those dollars. So make smart consumer decisions. How does this impact reducing our risk of the Cadillac tax kicking in?
So because it reduces the total premiums, it puts off when and if we may be subject to the Cadillac tax. So under this plan, projecting forward, it does appear that we would avoid the Cadillac tax in 2018.
Okay, and what is that dollar amount in 2018 that we have to be under?
For a single plan, it is $10,200, and a family plan, it's $27,500. So the way the Cadillac tax works is if our premium were to exceed that, so for instance, if we had a single plan and the combination of the premium plus the HSA exceeded the $10,200, that difference would be subject to the tax, and the tax is 40% of that difference. So if our premium comparable would be $1,000 more, we would owe $400 per single plan as an excise tax.
And who actually pays that?
The district would pay that.
And then what would that mean to us?
It means we would be cutting someplace else to come up with those dollars.
Yeah,
Since
exactly.
we are under a cap, there's
Yep.
a minimum number of dollars that we have. So we would have to shift that from someplace else.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in essence, the risk associated with this is really resting with the district. We're assuming that there'll be, with the lower rates, we're assuming that there'll be a less
Utilization.
less utilization. And if that doesn't occur, it'll affect the balance that we hold in reserve in our health account, which then we'll have to build back up with additional premiums in the following year. So it's a short-term risk, relatively small, with the intention that we're actually going to save money. But even if we don't, it's at least covered in that regard. The other part is there's out-of-pocket dollars associated with HSA that we don't currently have, that we're hoping will be covered through that risk. If not, then it will result in higher premiums, of course. So either way, I think we're, on the short term, we might have there's a potential for a deficit if it doesn't work out as planned, but there's long-term solutions to dealing with that deficit in terms of plan design or premium increases or whatever.
There's clearly an incentive for employees to be better consumers, because any dollars that stay in their HSA are theirs. They don't lose it. It stays with them. It's inheritable. And it's one of those plans where I think we could clearly say this is a win-win for both the employer and the employee.
And I think under the HSA format, in up to a certain point, every single dollar has to be used for healthcare. But I think after you there's an age break, I think it's 65 or somewhere around,
Yeah.
it actually turns almost into a 401, into a
Retirement instrument.
retirement instrument. So if you should be lucky enough not to have a day in the hospital until you're 90, then the HSA will just continue to build up and become a retirement thing. And Mr. Como.
Lori, would you remind me how we came up with the September 1st date as the new calendar year essentially for healthcare?
So many of our teachers are on our plan, and so what we are proposing is to align our health insurance year with our teachers' year, so that it's much easier to provide information to them. We have an open enrollment window in the fall tied with our beginning of the plan. It's just a lot easier to disseminate information and for our staff to be able to react to that information. Whether it be educational meetings that we put out, they're back in the district and they have time to then attend those, where if it's over the summer, our 10-month employees are just very difficult to reach out to.
Okay, and so essentially there will be two different opportunities for our teachers and employees to choose from: the current PPO plan this fall, if this passes, and then the new one that we're proposing tonight. And then the PPO is looking to phase out after one more year then?
Right, we would stay, July 1 is our renewal date for our PPO plan. What we're doing is making that a 14-month year, to get it onto the 9/1 of 16 cycle. We will introduce this plan 9/1 of 2015, and it's optional. That's the proposal. And then effective 9/1 of 2016, it would become the plan. And we would migrate everybody over.
With the PPO being extended out to 14 months, is there anything that we need to know about that? Any particular regulations that,
No, what it will do is employees who have already met their deductibles, we aren't going to have them start over July of 2016. So they will have a 14-month plan year truly as it applies to their deductibles. So
okay,
it is an advantage to those people who happen to
for the
have
employees,
met it.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's been covered in a lot of work sessions, not a need for a lot of questions. I think we've had 3 or 4 or 5, some before I even got on the board. So I guess if there's no, we ready for the vote?
Well, how about a motion?
No motion yet? Oh. Any motions? Mr. Como?
Sure, I'll move to implement a high deductible health plan with a health savings account contribution effective September 1st of 2015, and to phase out the current PPO health benefit effective 9/1/16.
Second.
Okay, additional discussion. Mr. Edlin?
I'm in favor of doing this, but I do have to express a concern. The HSA contribution is significantly, from people that I've talked over the last, since we've had our workshop, is significantly higher than what I'm hearing out with most employers in the community. I'm going to combine that and consider that a benefit because we also offer a clinic. And the clinic covers a majority of your bottom-tier costs in healthcare, your office visits, your general prescriptions, so there's a, right off the bat, there's a pay-nothing healthcare benefit for our employees that you're not going to find out in the private sector for most employers. So I'm looking at this as a number that's too high. We want our employees to use that clinic because that's where our savings are going to come from. We're going to come from a $40 office visit going from a standard office visit of $125. We're going to save on prescriptions because any prescription that is prepackaged can be handed out by the clinic. We're looking at bringing in a physical therapist. We're looking at a lot of costs that would be associated with general first-tier healthcare costs. So I'm looking at this benefit as a check that we're going to hand employees each year as a thank you. I don't look at it as necessarily something that they are going to need in terms of bottom-tier health care because they already have that taken care of by the clinic. And again, we're trying to encourage employees to go to the clinic. So I don't understand why we have to be this high when I'm hearing $5,000 deductibles in the private sector with an HSA of $1,500. So
The health savings account is the dollar amount that we contribute each year can be reviewed on an annual basis. The reason we targeted a 50% level is because employees have no chance to build up a savings account. So what we didn't want was a fear factor that I could be hit in one surgery and I have to write a check out for $5,200 if I happen to have a family plan.
I hear that, though, in the private sector. For people that don't have a health savings account, that's what they have. They've got a $5,000 deductible. They don't have a clinic. They don't have a health savings account. Here's what you have.
But we are going from a traditional plan where their exposure is that, that out-of-pocket deductible, the max.
Their
So-
exposure isn't different than anybody else who walks down the sidewalk. It's a benefit offered by your employer. And I go back to saying, I don't know why, but it just seems like if you're working for a government entity, you're at a much higher tier than what the private sector is. I don't know why. I don't know why that is. So I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to change the district's HSA to $1,500. And again, I'm going to go back to my reasoning that, A, we don't have the money to begin with. We're hoping to be able to, you know, save up that money through our healthcare plan and be able to offer it, and we can always increase it. We do have a clinic that employees can go to.
Can I
Is
ask for
your
clarification?
motion, just to clarify your motion, is it $1,500 on the family
On the
plan?
family plan.
Okay.
Yes.
Any change on the single?
You know, that's a hard one. I'll let I'll open that one up for discussion if anybody wants to. On the single plan, it's a little bit more, I mean, it's different if you're single.
But your motion is to amend just the family to $1,500 from $2,600, was it?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? We don't have a second, so I guess we'll move on.
Motion fails.
Motion fails. Well, I don't know, we didn't vote on the motion, but you failed to get a second, we'll put it that way. Just for my own purposes to address your concerns about the level of the HSA. I would have preferred actually it to be higher and to have it offset our OPEB obligation. I think really the best benefit for, and it is a benefit, there's no doubt about that, is to convert our OPEB obligation into a non-OPEB obligation and move that into HSA dollars for our employees. The way it's set up now, though, with the level it's at, it's really not enough to offset the OPEB obligation fairly. And it is protecting the employees from any exposure, which we kind of targeted when you implement the HSA high deductible plan, was to make sure the employees could trust that it wasn't a plan that was going to hit them hard in the pocketbook. And it was part of what was discussed during bargaining. Were we expecting any extra cost to come out of healthcare from what was being discussed? And we said, no, we weren't expecting any. That doesn't mean it couldn't happen. But I do agree it is a benefit. I do agree there's been a big shift in the private sector. It used to be when I first was in the private sector, and my wife was a teacher at the time, that we always took our private sector insurance plan because it was so much better than the public employees plan. It's not that the public employees plan has gotten better, it's the private sector plans have changed dramatically. And that's because of the escalating healthcare cost and the unwillingness of businesses to subsidize healthcare through basically very good healthcare plans that they used to have 25, 30 years ago. School districts have had to adjust. I think it's been an ongoing thing since I've been on the board. My first goal was to get us off of the high-cost trust plan. Today, I believe we're saving about $5,000 per employee by being free of the trust plan and being self-insured, and also the shift of employee premium cost of 12%, which used to be less than 0.5% pre-Act 10. So we made a lot of changes and a lot of shifting the cost off to employees. At the same time, our employees' wages have been flat, more or less, especially when you consider the Act 10 impact. The 8% contribution that's extra on an employee. The wages have been flat for 4 or 5 years since Act 10. And for the district, we've been able to balance our budget every year because of Act 10. So I'm not complaining about Act 10. I think Act 10's has been given us a lot of tools that we wouldn't have today. But at the same time, there's only so much we can put up on our staff, cost of living wise. If you look at what a young teacher makes coming out of college and then their college bills, you throw the added burden of some healthcare cost on top of that. There's not a lot of money, discretional income at the end of the day. So if you contrast that with proposals for 17% raises or $4 an hour wages for some employee groups at the state level, are less than half 1% that we're have a tentative agreement with the teachers on is minuscule. And then to think that we should expose them to a higher risk on high deductible health care on top of that, I think is a little bit much. So, but I do agree with your points, Mr. Edlin. I think you make very good points. Relatively speaking, is higher than the private sector. Relatively speaking, it's certainly a debatable point whether that amount is too high. So, Mr. Como?
I just want to ask Lori, on our OPEB obligations, roughly, and Todd, you may know these numbers, I thought like 5 years ago, our OPEB obligation was roughly 195 million, and that has been significantly dropped to roughly 90 million now,
83, I think.
3 million?
Something
And
in that
this will continue to drop that, and what will this drop to approximately?
Well, a combination of removing the implicit subsidy
Yes,
reduces about
that's
30
actually the
million.
biggest,
Yeah, that's the biggest chunk.
number, yeah.
We actually did not have this plan costed out as
Okay.
far as from a OPEB obligation standpoint.
But we continue to whittle away at that, also with this, combined with the implicit subsidy and changing that around, so, okay, thank you.
Now, I should clarify, as long as our retiree benefit is a flat dollar amount, that's our OPEB
Sure,
obligation.
sure. So time value of money never changes, right?
So it won't have as much impact, I guess is what I want to follow
Sure.
up with.
In inflation dollars, I mean, when you look at what it was, I think it was like 137 million at one time, you know. When we implemented the cap, I talked to one of the retirees that retired because they were afraid of the cap. And according to their calculations, it cost them $70,000 of retiree benefit to have the cap implemented. Now, I think that sounds excessive, but it obviously cost them something for us to go from 137 down to 90. So from the actuarial point of view, putting in the cap was a big improvement. Getting in the implicit subsidy is the next big improvement. This is maybe beneficial, somewhat incremental, but it really is just the 75,000 that drives that number. And the fact the number's so much lower and we actually have more employees than we did back then is also fairly impressive. Any more questions on the high deductible health plan or any more motions of any type? I was trying to take a vote without motions before, so we have a motion by Mr. Como and a second by Ms. Madden. If no complaints, we'll move forward with the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No?
4 in favor and 1 opposed. Good questions and good discussion. Okay. Item number 4, approval of participation in the Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance. Southwestern would be over by La Crosse. SWSA is how it's on the agenda.
This is an organization we've been involved with for 10-plus years. It's a very inexpensive amount to pool the resources of school districts throughout the state to help with various legislative items, some academic items. There's a number of things. For example, we're currently working with Wisconsin Manufacturers of Commerce on some things coming out of Madison at this point, but it's been very beneficial to us. It gives a big voice from the area with our state legislators, and I would propose that we continue, given the small dues amount.
Do we have any board members that routinely attend those meetings anymore? Or do
I don't
they-
think, the meetings are unusual times. They've changed the times and the dates, and they're typically conflicting with a lot of things we do here. But we still contribute. I contribute to the organization quite regularly, and I'm in contact with a lot of the members quite often.
Mr. Como?
Is this, Todd, is this the same legal counsel as we've had in the past, or is that
Pete
changed?
Christensen, right?
Same
Yep,
one?
yep,
Okay.
same one.
And the number of participants in terms of the number of districts, is
Oh,
it
boy,
roughly
I
the
mean,
same?
almost
It's
every-
28,
28?
actually.
Yeah, just about every
Yeah.
one, including
It
Milwaukee.
says
and
30, but
this
it's
area.
Roughly the
28
same
plus.
as before, and we don't have to participate in the 220
No.
program
we do not.
portion, right?
That's almost disappeared at this point for many of the districts anyways.
And what's the Hanover research with
That's,
respect to?
districts who want to use them will get a reduced price or research organization. For example, one of the districts, I want to say, either Kettle Moraine or Menominee Falls, had a study done for them on some academic issues.
So there's a discount or
I,
whatever? given
it's
to
a
those,
lower
or-
cost,
Okay.
but they are contracted to this organization to provide information.
Okay.
Just a little background on the Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance, because I used to be involved in it, used to attend quite a few of their meetings. It's always been an organization that's a group of common interests for the most part, that you don't get within the School Board Association. The School Board Association, and a lot of the smaller districts tend to dominate that because it's one district, one vote, and their interests aren't necessarily aligned all the time with the Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance. Some of the things that the Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance has been, what should I say, either they try to be careful about, neutral about, was because Milwaukee is, I believe Milwaukee's still in it. Milwaukee's always been, their school board has generally always been in favor of the voucher program, so they never took a decision to push against the voucher program. For most of the other school districts, it didn't matter because we weren't affected by the voucher program. Most of it was related to school funding, and the school funding picture changed a lot after Act 10, so.
Well, it's still a big issue.
Right.
Funding is always
Right.
going to be a
Right.
issue, I think, for some time to come. But some of those other issues you mentioned are becoming, coming on the radar because it will impact a lot of schools in southeastern Wisconsin. But, the nice thing about it, it's a combination of both board members and administrators, and it's a nice opportunity to collaborate with other districts on what's happening or coming out of Madison.
So I think it's been it's been a group that there's a need for it, and has not been a controversial group to belong to. I mean, everybody's fairly careful in terms of trying to toe the line and understand that there's two sides to every story.
To work with the folks in Madison and
Yeah.
in the area.
Right. I believe they have their own lobbyist a little bit that they share.
Well, Pete Christensen is an attorney.
Right.
And he,
He's primary lobbyist on that.
right.
And also Milwaukee has their own lobbyist as well, I think.
They have their own governmental relations person. That's
Yeah.
right.
So it allows us to kind of coordinate with them, coordinate with
Right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wisconsin School Board Association and stuff like that. Okay. Do I have a motion? Mr.
Yes, I will
McCaffrey?
make a motion. I move to approve the resolution for the district's participation in the Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance for the 2014-15 school year.
We'll see you next month on the next
Okay,
one.
that's what I figured.
We're a year late, huh? A second from Ms. Madden. Any further discussion? No additional discussion. We'll go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Passes 5-0. Information items. Monthly budget update.
Well, in February, we received the second installment of our property taxes. And for the general fund, that total was $14.9 million. And then there was an additional $2 million that went to the debt services fund for the energy efficiency general obligation debt payment, which is going to be on April 1st. So the district and local sources has received 73.54% of the 2014-15 budgeted amount compared to 72.62% last year. And then go into the second page of the month-to-date financial. We have $261,537 in bilingual bicultural aid and $111,000 in SAGE grants. So overall in the general fund, the district has received 56.87% of the annual fiscal revenue year-to-date compared to 56.3% last year. Going on to expenditures, which is the third page of the report, the district has spent 53.34% of the budgeted amount for salaries year-to-date compared to 52.93% last year. In employee benefits, we're at 54.68% year-to-date compared to 63.43% last year. And at the last page of your packet for this particular, the monthly budget report, it has the breakdown of the health claims payable. And that went, the ending balance jumped up about $400,000 for the month of February. Going into purchase services, we have year-to-date our pupil transportation, which is on page 4 of the report, where you have pupil travel, and then another line under that, vehicle fuel. We have through January on the report, January 2015, in the current year. Last year we had through December. That's why you can see that discrepancy. But overall, if you compare the January year-to-date regular and special education pupil transportation and fuel invoices, the district has saved, compared to last year, $170,000. And that can all be attributed, even more so, $247,000 for the special education transportation due to the reduction in the number of daily routes. So we continue to see a savings in our transportation department. And then it is up this year in the regular fund, in Fund 10, just from the annual price increase. But due to the reduction in number of routes in special education, we're down $247,000. And then in capital objects, which is,
That's really good news, Joe. You know, we switched contracts a couple of years ago. One of the first things that we were looking at from a cost savings, well, there were a couple things. One was the routes, and actually participating in that. We hadn't been actively participating in that route conversations. And now we actively participate on that on a regular basis. So that's where I'm assuming a lot of the savings is coming in, is we've actively been engaged in that portion of the discussion, correct?
That's correct.
And I don't know if you can recall back to last year was our first year with propane, but the year prior to that, we were still on diesel. Remind the order of magnitude of fuel cost savings when we went from diesel to propane. Do you recall that?
it was a significant savings. Even with the issues they had with propane last year, we had it locked in, the rate locked in. So that didn't affect us. But it was a very significant savings in fuel from the previous year.
All right.
And we continue to have those savings, as you said, through the route reductions. This year, we're up 2%, 2.5%, just due to the contract escalation. But in that special education fund, as you can see with those route savings, actively managing the routes, we resulted in another $248,000. But in answer to your question, the fuel, I believe it was.
I want to say, well, it depends on the price at the pump.
Sure.
So diesel has fluctuated as well as gas prices this year, so I haven't measured it this year. Originally, it was about a 50% savings.
Yeah, it's significant, very significant dollars switching over to the propane. Now, the software that we now have access to and we're actively engaged in, how's that been working out for us?
We've had tremendous luck with it's Versatrans as the software. And we also incorporate that with Infinite Campus so that now families can actually see their students' bus route information on the student side.
Nice,
So
nice. That wasn't
that
something
wasn't
we
there
anticipated,
before.
right? So that's just kind of an extra that falls under the software. So that's good. That's good to know that we knew that change was being implemented, but we haven't heard anything about the software reporting system and how we're engaged in the process now and how that's been working out. So it's translating into some nice cost savings for us.
So we can print out the route for any student, any route. We can see whether buses are on time or not. It just has so many capabilities we didn't have before.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Kurt.
Mr. Adlin?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out on our, the total budget and under the expenditures for gas for heat and the difference between last winter and this winter, even though we've had a significant February, our year-to-date actual in the 13-14 school year was $456,000. This year it was $381,000. So you spent significantly less money. I think that would primarily be attributed to January, because February's bills probably are rolling in now.
Correct.
Right, and we had a milder January this year than we did last year, so, we
Which I
haven't.
found really hard to believe, but my utility bill said the same thing at home when I compared them. So,
I guess what I'm pointing out is, we entered into an energy savings contract. And one of my concerns in going into that contract was that we're going to be looking at the aggregate for the district. This is an example where warm weather played a significant impact on our utility bills, not an energy savings program. And so my concern extended to, because we're going in the aggregate for the entire district and all of our facilities, are we going to see implemented measures which are going to have less of an impact than the actual weather did? And we're going to be looking at an average over time, if I remember right, that's what the contract said. We're going to be looking at average over time. Well, we've had two of the worst Februaries in history that are going to have a significant impact on our huge utility bills that we're going to be seeing next month. And if we have a very mild weather going forward, much mild weather for the next couple of years in January, February, more normal winters, if you will, that's not going to be due to significant energy savings improvements we had as much as it will be towards milder weather. So that's one of the reasons that I voted against that, because we should be really monitoring the energy improvements that we're making, not things that the energy improvements that we're making have no control over, which is a big portion that has to do with the weather.
Mr. Edlin, I just think you're incorrect there. I think
Okay.
that was discussed at the time, and you were incorrect back then, and you're incorrect now. It's not in the aggregate, as you're stating. It's actually more specific than that.
The contract that we signed said that the contractor would be looking at the aggregate utility bills for the district.
Well, if you look at the specific points and during the discussion, it's more specific than that. It's not just the aggregate bill, as per said, But I know that was brought up previously, and if that's why you voted against it, fine, but I mean, the issue is that it's not about this broader bill perspective,
Yeah,
my recollection is that, anyway.
yeah. My concern was that it was expressed as an energy savings program, and when we looked at replacing the boilers at South with a 100-year payback, that's not really the reason we were doing it.
Okay,
Yeah. Thank you.
yep. Mr. Como?
So it looks like we're on track, and we don't have any surprises that are coming up, Joe?
No, we're going to talk about our forecast a little bit later, but yeah, we're on track for this year right now. And just going through the rest of the statement, we're looking at, in our debt service, right now we're looking at, we had a debt service payment of $488,000 in February for the second of our 3 lease payments for the Cisco communication systems. So in answer to your question, overall in the general fund right now, the district has spent $69.53 million, over 47.62% of the budget, and we're on track at the same rate from last year. We're at 48.29% expended by the same time last year. So we're slightly under where we're tracking from last year, percentage basis. And then in Fund 27, that's also been included for your review. We've had $913,000 in state handicapped aid and $21,000 in federal aid. So overall, in the special education fund fiscal year to date, the district's received 16.11% of the annual revenue, anticipated compared to 18.45% last year. And the district has spent 50.65% of the budget amount for salaries year to date compared to 49.75% last year. So overall, in the Fund 27, we've already discussed the transportation savings. Our year-to-date expenditures are 13.6 million, or 47.98%, compared to 49.48% expended by the same time of February of last year.
Any additional questions? Does that complete your monthly report?
Yes.
Well, then we'll move on to item number 2, the budget projection, 2015, 2016. Who's the expert on this?
I guess that's me. Last month, we went over the revenue side of the projection. This month, we've added the expenditures. Not as pretty. It does indicate that we're going to have to sharpen our pencil as we go forward into 15-16. The reduction in state aid at the state level is definitely going to have an impact. Given current contract proposals, existing budgets, current projections for utilities, insurances, and all those other fixed costs that we have. If we did nothing different than we've done this year and just roll everything forward, we would be looking at a $3.7 million deficit. So obviously, we aren't going to roll everything forward just as is. And those are conversations that we will be having at the executive team and discussing how we will approach this going forward, so that by the time we bring a budget back, we will have a balanced budget for you.
Mr. Como?
One of the more significant numbers you used to make this projection was the Consumer Price Index at 1.68%. Where did you get that from? Did that come from DPI?
That is the WRC rate
Okay,
for contracts that renew July 1. So it's the measurement of the January snapshot. So it's an amount not to exceed, if you will, for our base.
okay. So that formally came out?
Yes.
It has
yeah.
been released?
Yes,
I didn't know
it's-
if you were guessing that
Oh,
number.
no, it
or if
has been released,
if it
and that's
came
why
out.
we.
Yeah, and
that's why we-
WRC, I don't know why I thought it was DPI, but someone in Madison.
Yes, it's one of those state departments.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it has
It's
been.
always measured
It has
under-
been released, and we do know that
Yeah,
number.
they use the CPI as of January of the year preceding the contract.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Edlin?
What are we projecting student enrollment at between the 2 years? Going up to 15, 16 years, being this year, next year?
It's projected as being pretty flat. Because of the way the revenue cap formula is, it's got the hold harmless provision.
Right.
In
Average.
reality, we believe we'll have a slight deficit. That's been our trend.
Mr. Como?
Are we taking into consideration Mr. Walker's proposal right now? That's also in these numbers? And we're assuming that legislation would pass pretty close to what he's proposing, or?
As far as they relate to the revenue side?
Yes.
Yes. This-
Okay.
This projects the state budget as it currently is being proposed.
Okay.
As we see changes to that, we certainly will revise this.
Sure.
It does not include any provision to fund vouchers.
Okay. It's a hard number to swallow right now. It's a big number.
But it's, if you go back over past years, we've been in this position before. So it just means we have to get creative. This also includes the health insurance rates under the traditional plan, because at that point, we didn't have a high deductible plan. So we will have As we go forward, we will look at a projection of some of the migration and savings that might materialize there.
So that'll be a new number that you're going to have to put in your crystal ball. How many people will transition to the new health coverage versus the PPO? So add that to the long laundry list of
We have a-
assumptions that,
That's right, we have a lot of moving parts.
when do we see the complete laundry list of assumptions? What's the date on that, do you recall?
I want to say June, but it might be May.
Okay.
I think June actually is the proposed budget, so May. So we will keep this as an agenda item and keep updating you.
Okay, well, I think one thing that we've seen over the period of time, over the last few years, is that we try to figure it out one way or another. We don't complain about it, we just do the best we can, and we do have tools available to us. Just so everyone knows, the tentative agreement with the teachers has to do with last year's expenditures, not next year's expenditures. There'll be a new contract negotiation, providing that we approve the agreement, that will affect next year's expenditures. So that agreement is really about last year's cost, not next year's cost, and this is more about next year's cost. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Clifton, but that's
You
mine.
are spot on.
Okay, very well. Any other questions about the budget? Okay, moving on. We have the pleasure of the energy projects update, which I've been asking for, and who's the expert on this one?
Me, unless you get really technical, and then I'm going to grab Glenn.
I'm looking him over in the corner, and I can't wait to grab him, you know, yeah.
We have been meeting with Siemens on a regular basis. Many of these projects will take place over the summer, so there hasn't been an urgency to put items out for bid and to lock those pieces in. But you'll see there's a summary in there of some of the items that have been put out for bid and pricing has been locked in. The water projects and the building envelope work has been finalized. Both have come in under budget. So those surpluses will help with the bottom line. At this point, we have no reason to believe that we can't accomplish everything on our original list. As you may recall, when we totaled in all of the issuance costs and project costs, we exceeded the $8 million. And so we had held in reserve, you'll notice in this case, it's the football stadium lighting that we haven't released for bidding because that's our adjuster.
Right.
But at this point, we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to accomplish that as well. You can see from the listing, and I apologize for the small print and trying to get everything on one page. You can see who the bidders were or who were solicited, what their bid amounts were, and then their negotiated contract price is where they've been locked in. Under the mechanical install, the labor has been locked in. And the next step, now that we have a contractor, which is Mechanical Inc., they then are bidding the equipment out, and we'll oversee that process. And then the various stages on the other items you can see there, they're either RFPs have been written or have been issued and are awaiting results to come back.
I'm just wondering, you know, one of the issues, and I think Mr. McCaffrey brought up, and of course, Mr. Edlin has a lot of expertise in this area as well. When we talk about the building envelope air leakage issue, I certainly don't want anyone cutting corners on that. And if we need to bring in an outside expert to monitor that, make sure we're getting the very best. We don't want to have to be redoing this in, you know, a short period of time. So that's one of the reasons why we created that extra amount of money, is because we wanted to make sure that was done to a good, high-quality level, and we don't want to repeat the poor stuff that was put in there to begin with, and be back at it with maintenance staff and time and effort and unhappy results later on. So I think that's a very important part of this project. It's one of the reasons why we wanted to make sure we had enough money and to cover it, so.
You'll notice that only 2 vendors were solicited in that category. They're all experts in that field. I did have a conversation with Siemens on, why? Who are these guys, and why did you select these 2? And the response I got back is that they're people they've worked with before, they are known in the industry, they stand behind their work, and they're also willing to provide the guarantees that the energy efficiencies are going to be there, and that they'll stand behind them. The one company chose not to bid. It's because, based on our timeline of when the work needed to be done, they didn't have the staffing available to match our schedule.
And I don't think it'd cost much to have someone review the actual, what they plan to use for materials and the workmanship and all that, as a third party, and I think that was always something that I know other board members were concerned about. I think it's such an important part. I mean, I'd feel pretty bad if 3 years from now, we were not hearing about what is a problem because we didn't do it right, so if there's a little bit of extra expenditure to make sure that's done right, it can't be very much, and it's probably worth it, peace of mind for all the board members that were concerned about that.
So are you proposing I have a third party evaluate the proposal?
Usually there's someone that can bid you'd have a third party at least evaluate the.
Bid review.
Yeah, bid review. Make sure that the quality of the work is there, and then.
And material.
And you might even ask for an inspector bid, to monitor the work as it's going on.
Yep.
I mean.
Materials,
yeah.
should get a material list,
Yeah.
what they're gonna use. You should get a material list of the products that the contractors are gonna use.
Mr. Edlin?
I think that goes back to something that was brought up during this whole discussion about having an owner's rep.
Yeah.
We never went anywhere with that. We're still discussing it, but we never went anywhere with it. So I don't know if we're bringing this up again as we keep talking about it, we never go anywhere with it.
Well, Siemens is our owner's rep, but in this particular case, I think the risk here is so high of cutting corners that I would be more comfortable with a little bit more expertise monitoring the corner, make sure there's no corners cut, because I'd rather go without lights in a football field than go with a bad job on the, I just want to make sure we're not cutting any corners.
That's the reason that I brought that up, because I don't think Siemens is our rep. They were a bidder on the job, just like other people were supposed to be. So they have a financial interest of their own, not representing us, but representing themselves as a corporate entity under contract.
I think I agree with you, Mr. Edlin. I think the point is that we're better off, kind of like we do in legal stuff, or we have in the district in the past in legal stuff, getting experts in each specific area rather than hiring one general owner's rep.
Yep.
When we have a specific concern, getting a specific expert to come in and cross-check something of this magnitude. I agree. I wouldn't necessarily trust even a broad-based guy to be an expert in everything that we're having to do here. And this particular one is fairly, this is a critical one for us, so.
Yep.
Mr. Edlin?
We keep falling back on this, if nobody else bids on it, somebody's automatically gonna get the contract issue. I see that here, I saw that with this overall proposal. And I'm not so sure that we're in our, in the best interests of doing that. That would go to district policy and something for the policy committee to review. But other governmental entities, local governmental entities, if you don't have at least 2 bids, the project doesn't go forward. That's just my opinion. You're not getting competitive bidding, you're getting an exclusive contract.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, in this particular case, the bid's already done, but, and we've already turned over that process over to Siemens. But I was very uncomfortable with the fact that we didn't have more bidders than, on the project. I think we should have a policy that requires more bidders.
Yeah.
in the
We
policy.
we actually do have a policy, but I don't think it spells out that we have to have at least 2 bidders in order to award a contract. In, you know, in the case of the building envelope, that's what we have here. We got one person who got the contract, the other person didn't bid. So it's an exclusive contract just because they showed up at the door and said, here's what we'll do it for this amount.
Didn't we have 2 bidders on that?
No, the second party chose not to.
It's dropped out.
They couldn't meet
Okay.
the timelines.
Okay.
That's part of the difficulty because of the size of our district, and summer is pretty short time to address all of our buildings.
Right.
So it's got to be a pretty large firm that can be able to have the manpower to accommodate the time schedule.
Yeah, but there's ways to get around that, though. They could have done a portion this year, a portion next year, because this is a multiple-year project.
No, all the work has to be done in 2000.
Or for the dollar amount that we borrowed this time for the 2 million.
Mhm.
But we specify what could be done under that 2 million, right? So we don't have to divvy the entire amount up to do building envelope this year. Could
No,
we-
the $8 million has a spend down of 1 year. The entire borrowing.
I would also say the same thing applied to the Field of Dreams. We didn't get multiple bidders for the Field of Dreams, for the football fields. We had one bidder, one contractor. So this isn't unusual for the district, unfortunately. I would say we should have multiple bidders, I agree with you, but our past history has been to accept one bid. I don't think that's wise, but, and we all had concerns about that with the Siemens situation. But I also look at Field of Dreams as being something similar, and I didn't hear any objections back then. In fact, I just noticed there was only one vote against that at the time. Thank you, Mr. Norder. It'd be great.
If you look at the RFP on the air envelope, or the building envelope, you'll notice that it says de-scoping response. We haven't let the bid out yet because we're still de-scoping the response.
Okay,
I also am not comfortable with only one bidder.
okay.
So I am looking for some alternate people to ask Jason from Siemens to get that bid out to. So we have not let that bid yet. We are still de-scoping that, and we're going to move forward to try to find another one that would bid on that for us. So,
Okay, well, that's good. Mr. Edlund?
To what extent are we doing building envelope at North?
the building envelope, the spec, I think, entails all the doors for leakage, any penetrations that come through the roof for leakage, any parapet, wall seam for leakage. They will check the exterior caulking on the spancrete for leakage. I think that's about the scope of it at North Steve. But it's just basically every penetration that we could have a infiltration of air will be checked and fixed if there's an issue there.
Okay.
Do we have on the building envelope solutions, Glenn, I mean, how long have they been in business, and have we gotten a profile on them as a contractor? from
I have
Siemens?
not. When we talked to Jason, Building Envelope Solutions and Can-Am were the only ones that he was aware of that strictly dealt with building envelope. I have a lot of contractors can do a majority of this, but they don't go the other portion of it. And the biggest one is, we got to make sure the contractor's going to guarantee the savings that they said we were going to save on that. And we have a few contractors that don't want to put themselves out there to say, yeah, we believe we're going to guarantee that for you. So that's one of the, I don't want to call it a hurdle, but that's one of the things we're dealing with, is finding a contract that will guarantee us that savings that we're looking for.
And I think that goes back to the earlier question where, when we're talking about savings, it's more specific than it is general. And in a way, the risk on the savings not happening is Siemens' risk, right?
Yes.
it's not our risk.
Yes.
So I don't think there was anything in the requirement that the subcontractors would have to guarantee the savings, back guarantee the savings to protect Siemens. Right?
Yeah,
So they're kind of forcing this, and that's limiting the number of bidders. Probably also driving up the cost, so, but, whatever works out, but we gotta make sure whoever they select can do the job and do it properly. So I'm glad we're looking at a second alternative. Mr. Evan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mechanical Incorporated was selected as a subcontractor for the mechanical improvements. And there was some discussion back when about design build. Is Mechanical Incorporated designing the systems for us? In other words, we're going to do a complete gutting of the, Waukesha South and Les Paul.
actually, I think that was the portion of Siemens scope would have been to design what was going in there.
Siemens has got one engineer, and as I recall a conversation in Illinois, and I thought that they were working with the mechanical contractor. I'm not sure, like, part's a little fuzzy to me about who's going to be designing the system and this is the contractor selected to install it. Who do we go back to if there's issues? Siemens, obviously, but who's Siemens going to be going to? Their own in-house people or Mechanical Incorporated or?
I'll
Don't
have
know.
to find that answer out for you, Steve, I don't know.
And just questioning the high-efficiency domestic hot water heaters at North. Those were like, the ones that were up there were about 10 years old, 12 years old?
Probably about 10 years old now.
Okay, all right. Is that going to be just a like kind of replacement of the equipment, or?
Actually, right now, North is heated with 4 boilers, runs through a heat exchanger. That's what we're heating our hot water with.
Okay.
We're gonna go actually to a regular, high efficiency water heater.
Oh.
And we are gonna get rid of the 4 boilers and the 2 heat exchangers that they run through.
Well, that changed since the last time I was there. There used to be
Yeah.
a giant storage tank when they actually took showers in the high school, and that got it out, and then we installed 2 hot water heaters, and that wasn't enough, so we ended up going to 4, I think. And now that's all changed, and they went to a heat exchanger?
That's all changed.
Wow. We just came, we're like a revolving door on this equipment. Okay, all right, thanks.
All good questions. Any other questions for Mr. Norder while he's here? Joe?
Are we pretty much on schedule? Are there any yellow flags at this time?
No, like Lori said, the majority of this work is gonna be done over the summer. They are gonna do a couple of projects over spring break with the water efficiencies on our coolers. We have a few of our big walk-in coolers and freezers that are water-cooled. We're gonna change them over to air-cooled. They're gonna do that over spring break and get those projects out of the way. But I'm sure that if there's some things as we move forward that we can get them in to do prior to school being over, we will do that. So, I mean, they're aware of the tight schedule that we have. So we're just going to try to knock off things when we can and continue to move forward. I truly, Mr. Como, don't see any yellow flags at this time. I think we're in a good place.
Okay, and it's easier to say that at this time in the ball game, right? When you're actually tearing things apart and implementing, that's where sometimes some surprises may come in, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot more questions and a lot more details as we progress through the project. So, thank you, Glenn, for that.
You're welcome.
The only question I have is, since it looks like we'll probably be doing it, and I assume we'll be doing it over the summer, would be the light change out on the football fields. Would that be done over the summer, or we do that later in the year?
If all the projects come in, or we're comfortable moving forward with that, we sure would like to try to accomplish that before the fall season.
Okay. The only thing I would suggest that we continue to do in advance of that is follow up with some of the references for similar installations, see what the maintenance costs are for those installations, make sure that we're getting. Reason I ask, because I just had an LED that was supposed to last 10 years, it lasted 2. So, you know, you hate to pay a premium for lights and then have them turn out that they don't last as expected, or there's not a warranty on them to last that long. So I think we should do a little follow-up and research on that just to make sure that we don't get caught blindsided on that as well. And I think the other part of that was inclusive in the design for those lights is to cut down on the light pollution around the community. Important part for North, you know, I think we agreed that the priority would be North first, then we'd choose one of the other schools, but North would be the first priority because of complaints around the community with light pollution and stuff like that. I think the design should take into account that we want as little light pollution as possible for all 3 sites. That's part of the reason for doing it. So you'd follow up on that and,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I mean,
Actually, if you go to muscolighting.com, they have, and that's the style lighting we have in our 3 stadiums now is Musco fixtures. They have a nice display of fields that they have done with LED, and it's amazing how you can pinpoint the light right where you want it.
okay, how do you spell that?
Oh, man, I don't know.
Okay,
I'll get it to you.
you get it to me, send it to me, and I'll take it, you
Send
know.
it on the packet update too.
Because I think it's an important part. If we end up going that route, we have to get something out of it for sure. Mr. Edlin?
On some of these older boiler replacements, south I'm not as much concerned about, but Les Paul Middle School, do we have asbestos issues that have to be dealt with?
Steve, I think some of the piping at Central, it has some asbestos elbows on it that we'll have to deal with. But as far as the boilers themselves, I do not think so. But we will make sure that we bring our environmental management contractor that we work with. They go through all of our projects before we start them and do a survey to make sure that we're getting things out that we need to get out before the contractor gets in there.
Okay, and who's going to be responsible for asbestos removal?
They will actually be the source that will bid it out for me. Environmental management consultants will do that for me.
I mean, is that something that is that part of the overall contract with Siemens?
No, that's something, it's not part of Siemens' contract.
If they're going to
Though
be,
we have funding built in there
But
to
we built
cover
it in.
that, it's a district responsibility. Did that answer your question?
it does, I don't think that should be part of what Siemens should include in their package replacement for,
It was disclosed that it was not, just because of the uncertainty of whether it would be encountered or not.
there's a whole lot of uncertainty in this whole relationship. There's a lot of unknowns. We're not working off a blueprint here. Okay, so it'll be above and beyond and come out of our Glenn's budget to do that?
No, there's a contingency built into
Contingency,
the
okay.
funding
All right,
that was set aside for.
okay, that's what I was
one of
getting
the-
at.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it was part of our $8 million borrowing. It's not part of the costing that Siemens
Got
provided.
it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, that's great. We were looking for a little update. When do we expect the first round of work to start, Mr. Norder?
First round of work will start over Easter break with a few things being done. And then, like I said, as we are able to move into some of the projects that will be not intrusive to education, we'll continue to move on. But I think our kickoff is over Easter break, and then we'll start moving forward from there.
Okay, thank you. Good questions again. Now I just gotta find my agenda path. What's next on the agenda?
The town of Brookfield TID report out.
Okay.
I'll take that one.
This is something that Mr. Como is very excited about, so I'm gonna turn this over to him.
I don't
Go
know.
ahead, Mr. Como.
Those are some good adjectives. As you recall, TID number 1 for the town of Brookfield actually came into existence about a year ago, March 13th, 2014. The Joint Review Board voted that to move forward, the resolution to move forward on that. And just as you recall, the town of Brookfield, WCTC, our school district, and the county gets representation. There's one other person from the general community that's on that joint review board. We were asked to reconvene actually today. So I was at a meeting at 4 o'clock, and we were asked to approve a resolution to extend that out, to extend out the final TID installment payment by a year. And it did pass. The good news is Marcus Corporation has joined up with some stronger financial partners. And you're going to start to see the project at the corners moving forward now. We hope that the bonding will be completed by August, and it'll move forward from that point on. So that's some good news. There was also a little bit of news that was shared that, as you recall, that district included one of our schools, and there's area around the corners that was included in that, and there's also some good movement on some potential projects outside of the corners, but still within that TID number 1 district. So we're starting to see some activity moving on. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Como? Mr. Edlin?
No questions, but an observation, they actually started tearing down Menards this weekend.
Well,
Yeah, so I mean, the project is, after staying at a standstill for probably a year and a half or so, it's now actually moving forward, and that's good for us.
Yeah, there's still a lot of diligence that needs to be done between now and the bonding, but a lot of work still to do, but it is moving in a very good direction right now, so.
okay, so now we have one last item on our agenda, and it's a discussion item. It's a local education option partnership with Montessori School of Waukesha. I know over the years, Montessori School of Waukesha has interacted with this school district quite a bit. Apparently, you're having new conversations with them, Mr. Gray, is that correct?
Right, we currently have a large 4K program there, and with the advent of vouchers, which I think are here to stay in some form or another, we know that the current funding plan for vouchers is very disadvantageous to our school as well as other school districts. With that in mind, what I would like to do is do a small pilot with the private school to see if this is an option that could work out in the future. Using up to 30 seats at Montessori would be a low risk, a low cost. We would actually benefit to a certain extent from that, depending on the mix of kids. You know, if they're in 4K and they were going to Montessori, we would benefit from that. If they were coming from the district, we might also benefit depending on how many were coming in and at what level. I think this is something that might be potential for larger scale in the future. I think it goes along with the great public school choice that we have. It's something that maybe in the future could provide widespread choice throughout the district, especially if the vouchers are going to have an impact here. And again, we know that each voucher right now was going to cost us approximately $13,000 plus a year over each year that the voucher student goes to a private voucher school. This particular program, as you know, the 4K, they come, they sign up here. We get to count them in the revenue control. They're counted for equalization aid. And then we provide a contracted amount to the provider, to the private school for their services. We have a number of other community partners. Lori, you can help me with how many, but I think we have about a dozen community partners, private schools that are already doing this plan. And again, I've discussed it with some of the legislative folks, including our lieutenant governor, as well as some folks at UW-Madison, to kind of see if the concept made sense. And they all said, might be well worth a shot at trying it out on a very small scale basis for a year. And again, this would only be a 1-year pilot. I would plan on having a short workshop session in the next few weeks, kind of go over the numbers, once I work with the Montessori folks to nail down some of the other issues, the numbers, potential transportation, some of those other things that are involved in this. Then we would have a short workshop session and go through those particular numbers. I hate to give you any numbers right now because I'm not sure what those would look like, and I don't want to tell you one thing and then have those completely changed. But I think even if we worked around the charter school amounts, let's say, we would come out to about $2,000 to the good once that student has been in the system for 3 years, just like our 4K program. 4K, it's break even the first year. We make a little bit, we net a little bit in the second year and third year, that much more, and this would be the same situation with this program.
Mr. Edlin?
You're going to have to enlighten me just a little bit, Superintendent Gray, on how this relationship works, because I know with our other 4K partners, we provide staff,
Right.
and they provide the facility. And so essentially, it's extending the public school into a private organization.
Well, actually, if I can correct you, a number of our Model 3 schools provide teacher and facility, and we just simply contract directly with them.
Okay. And Montessori has their own particular curriculum, and
Right.
it's what draws parents
Right.
to their
Yep.
school, is their
Correct.
their particular curriculum. So how would this work with us? I mean,
That's, I mean, we're already doing that with the 4K program. We would have to look at how the curriculum meshes, but in my discussions with the Montessori folks, the curriculum would not be tremendously different from ours. A lot of their issues are teaching style, those types of things, but we know that the Montessori students have been relatively successful when they come into our school, so I would not see that as a major issue. I'm sure that the parents attending the Montessori want to make sure that those students, when they leave, can do well, whether it's middle school or high school, depending on what level they go into. So I don't think they'd be as successful as they have been without the kind of success that their students are having.
Okay.
So,
And our staff in our regular buildings are under a lot of rigorous continuous improvement
right.
under the systems that
Yeah.
we deploy. But they're going to be under a different umbrella in Montessori, and how are those two going to mesh?
I do know the Montessori staff has a pretty extensive training, ongoing. I don't see it, it may be a different type of instruction, different type of curriculum, but I do know that the Montessori teachers do have to go through similar type of training. And again, if it's their teachers, they don't necessarily, like a private voucher school, they don't necessarily have to follow the same, the educator effectiveness program like our teachers would.
Okay.
And we've been actually contracting with many organizations throughout the years, whether it's a CISA 1 program, whether it's Rogers School, that type of thing. So, and I talked to the folks, the legislative folks and the UW folks, they said, this type of program has been going on for years. And in fact, we have some districts contracting with us for special ed. So it's not necessarily a new concept, nor is it really cutting edge. It's just basically taking a system that's out there and expanding it to I guess, offset the potential negative effects of a private voucher.
Okay. I know that the private voucher programs are real concerned about the dollar amount that they would receive from the state.
Right.
In saying,
Yeah.
look, there's a lot of administrative costs in getting these dollars.
Right,
So
right.
this isn't really beneficial to
No.
us at all. And so they're really
Yeah.
not excited about jumping into the program from what I've been reading in the paper. and
Right, well,
whatnot, but-
that piece, and then I don't think they know that they will find out their amount until into the school year after they've already started up, kind of like when we pass our final tax levy in early November. So this would be a potential advantage to them. They would know the dollar amount up front. They'd know how many kids. We'd know how many kids. We could budget for that. Right now, depending on how many kids go voucher, it's going to be a surprise to us. We won't know till probably somewhere early September, maybe before that. But I don't think so. I think this third Friday count is going to be kind of the indicator of where these students are at. So this is a great opportunity for us to partner with these organizations, and there's a known commodity, plus we would also benefit as well. We wouldn't lose the per pupil funding amount that we would lose under the private voucher.
So out of our 12 partners that we currently have, Montessori is one of the few that has beyond a K-4 program.
They have a K-8 program, right?
Right, they go up to K-8.
Yeah.
How many of our other partners have a K-8 program of the 12 that we currently have?
I don't know, I'd have to check that out. Most of them are preschool or K-5, but I'd have to check if there's any others that have.
La Casa maybe, or does La
That-
Casa?
Well,
yeah.
that's their plan
That's their
down the
plan,
road. They're
right.
not there yet, but
they
that's their
wouldn't-
plan.
Their plan is not to partner with us, but to charter through
No, they're,
UW.
correct,
I don't
correct.
think
Right,
there's
right,
anybody
right.
else, Steve.
Yeah.
Right, so it would
Yeah.
be only,
Yeah.
Montessori would probably be the only
Yeah.
one at this point that
Right.
we could
And
even
I-
try it with, but.
Right, exactly. And I think that the big advantage here is that, again, we would only do 30 kindergartners this year as a pilot. But again, the other advantage is for these schools to go charter, there's a whole bunch more red tape that they have to follow versus this plan. They can basically do what they need to do. They're going to have to meet our standards, just like they're doing with the 4K program. But again, I'm not concerned with a school like Montessori.
Thank you.
Mr. Como?
So this is an idea that you and the appropriate people at Montessori have
Right.
discussed.
Yes.
I heard you say that there is no special legislation or changes to the legislation that's required,
That's what I've heard.
okay? So what are our next steps as we're exploring
Well,
this?
I
and
think-
what's the timeline
I think I need to
for
get
this?
together one more time, to, if the board is willing to look at this, willing, potential approval down the road. Bill and I would need to get together, work out the numbers, work out how someone qualifies for it, then come to a short board workshop session, go through the numbers. And again, you're going to say, this looks just like the 4K numbers, and it will, so.
So timing of that, Todd? If
I don't know. I'll look at calendars. Maybe Wednesday night, we could pick an evening. But again, I need to spend a little bit more time with Bill on going over a
Okay.
few things.
Okay.
Mr. McCaffrey?
I have a couple questions, and I don't need answers for them now.
Okay.
But busing would be a concern?
Well, I don't think so, because it would be a choice school.
Okay, so we would not
That's how we treat it.
potentially- yes.
But there may be something that requires us. Not too worried, because their location is,
Right.
they probably have about 30 buses go by
Right.
their
Yeah,
location
no,
every day.
definitely.
So I don't see that as being a
So,
big
yeah,
issue.
and, yeah, and
Yeah.
the Catholic schools in the area
Yeah,
also have
right.
busing from us as
Right.
well. Assessments? Standardized
Again, that's
assessments?
something we would talk about. This year, we don't know what our assessments are gonna look like, and being kindergarten, there's not a big concern. But that is something we would have to develop. My guess is we probably have to have them take our state tests.
Our state
Wherever
tests.
they were, and I don't see that as being a problem. So,
Title services? Who goes? And
That-
how do we-
that's-
how we
that's-
divvy
Yep.
up that money,
yeah, that's, right.
Are existing students in the schools going to be eligible, or are they new students? You and I have talked about the voucher program, it's got to be a
Right.
new student.
Right.
Is this going to be existing students that can apply for it through the district that are already in the school? Or is it?
I think it'll be a mix of both. That's the one thing that the current voucher program is very restrictive on, who
Right.
can apply and who can get in. And I guess I'd like to be a little bit more flexible like that, in the event if down the road, we're gonna make this a real community opportunity.
And then, of course, always religion in a classroom, if we're planning on doing it to any of the religious schools.
Well, the voucher schools have to take that into account, and I
Yeah.
believe that if they take a voucher, they have to account for that fact and have that at a different time or do something different.
Yeah, because I know all the kids at
Yeah.
Pius are still getting religious instruction.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how it works, but.
Okay. I know that,
kind of
what we
envelops you in a
we can
Catholic
mirror
school.
what they, some of the Milwaukee charter schools, or not
Right.
charter, but voucher schools
Yeah,
do.
voucher schools, yeah.
To cover that. And
Okay.
They're under the same situation, so.
Okay, just a couple things that, or a
Yeah.
few things I'd like to talk about at a work.
Yeah, and those are some things that
Yeah.
we need to work out as well.
Okay.
So.
Well, I think it's a very positive thing that we're trying to be constructive.
Good.
I would like it to be, I would think with a program like Montessori, that there's a good opportunity for us
Right.
to have a very constructive
Yeah.
relationship. If we could make it a little easier for them to accomplish some of their goals.
Right.
And be more of a partnership instead of just
Right.
them having to take the long, hard path and maybe not do as much good as they could do relative to the district, I think.
Well, and they have some other options out there, but I'd like to explore this one. I think they would like to explore this one first.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
So,
I look at what's happening, let's say with one of our other 4K partners. We don't have the same track record with them that we've had with Montessori.
right.
And I don't think there was ever any desire for a partnership there. It was more like we want our own school and that's that. Whereas if Montessori is willing to partner with us on this and we can work it out, I think that's a wonderful thing.
right.
And it's a credit to them that they're willing to sit down
Yeah.
and at least talk to us about it. I don't know how many people have had their children in a Montessori program, but I had mine one way back when, and I think it builds a love for education, and it builds discipline, and it builds order, and it builds structure, and it's just, how do you make little kids do things just, they clean the classroom themselves, they put things away themselves, and, I mean, it's like they're all teachers' age at age 3. So it's very impressive, the whole program, and I wish everybody could have their children go through it, so, anyway. Okay, well, if nothing else is going on, I guess we'll adjourn the meeting. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.